My brother made my life a nightmare, got my wife pregnant, and now has the nerve to ask for help, after our parents cut him off and left me their $2 million inheritance. My younger brother David always had a deep resentment toward me. And if you think it came from jealousy, you'd be wrong. He was always the golden child, not me. There was no reason for him to feel jealous. Growing up, our mom pampered him like royalty. David got special meals, she did his laundry, and she'd ask me to help him with homework. I was just expected to assist, just because we're family. But nobody ever gave me that same care in return. I didn't complain much. I was self-reliant. Maybe I'm partly to blame for always helping him without asking for anything back, but it was never mutual. He only came to me when he wanted something. I was quiet, introverted, and liked my books. David was loud, aggressive, and honestly took after our dad. I've always been direct, never sugarcoating anything, and I think our mom resented that. David was her sweet baby boy, and I was just there. I didn't care much about the favoritism at first, but it turned ugly over time. David started mocking me, bullying me for being different. He'd make fun of my height, the fact that I wore glasses, and even sneak into my room to read my diary, then tattletale to Mom about what I'd written. When I confronted him, Mom laughed it off. Nothing was ever a big deal to her. He crossed so many lines. Like the time he almost snapped my glasses or the day I found little stones in my cereal, he thought it was hilarious. Thank God I noticed. Before biting down, Mom just shrugged it off again, saying, "That's just how brothers bond." Every fight, David would go straight for my soft spots. We went to the same school, and he knew I was getting picked on. Instead of backing me up, he joined in, called me names like ugly loser and hairy monkey. He even egged on the bullies to hit me, said I deserved it for being a failure. One time, over something stupid I don't even remember, he told me to just kill myself. That one hit different. I was already dealing with mental health issues, and hearing that from my own brother crushed me. I'm better now, but I'll never forget that. Dad was always working, and Mom didn't really care. Once, she even blamed me for provoking him. Things hit a peak in high school when David actually tried to set my hair on fire. No joke. And once again, Mom defended him, saying he was just playing. It was insane. But that time, Dad stepped in. He was furious. For once, he had my back. He even threatened to call the cops on David. That was a wake-up call for my brother. He had never been held accountable before. He looked shocked. Dad told him flat out that he had to start respecting me. Later that night, Dad came into my room to talk. I didn't expect much. I always figured he liked David more. They were a lot alike. But he told me he'd been hoping David would grow up and change. And now he was realizing David was just a bully. Hearing that meant everything. I almost broke down. I opened up and told him everything. Years of abuse, school bullying, all of it. Dad was stunned. The next day, he went to the school and made sure the bullies were warned. Then, he signed me up for MMA classes. Told me it was time to toughen up and stop letting people walk over me. I was just a skinny bookworm, so it probably looked ridiculous, but I took it seriously. I juggled classes and training, and it started to pay off. Physically, I changed. One day, David stole my pocket money I'd earned from doing chores. I caught him as he was about to ride off with his friends. I told him to give it back, and he smirked, saying I'd probably just go cry to Dad. I snapped, punched him square in the face. He fell back, stunned. I grabbed my money from his pocket and tossed him aside. David burst into tears, which was kind of hilarious, honestly. Mom came running out when she heard him. When she found out I'd hit him, she acted shocked. Started scolding me like I was the villain. She told me I should be a better example for him, while David stood there with a smug little smile. She even ran to Dad to complain about me. But Dad asked us both what happened. I told him the truth. David stole the money I worked hard to save. David said he needed it for a date, and that I should have just helped him out. Dad shook his head and said David was lucky it was just me. Anyone else would have called the cops. He told him stealing is stealing, and he had no right to take anything without permission. David didn't like hearing that. He started yelling, hoping Mom would step in. But Dad didn't budge. When he realized he wasn't getting rescued, he screamed that he hated me and locked himself in his room. After that day, David kept his distance. He finally got it. He couldn't push me around anymore. Even Dad wasn't on his side now. For the first time, I felt like we were standing on equal ground. He couldn't hurt me physically anymore, so he switched to whispering insults when no one was looking. He got moodier as he got older, snapped at everyone. If I asked him something, he'd walk off mumbling loser or nerd under his breath. If he needed to say anything to me, he'd make Mom do it. I once asked her why David couldn't. Just talk to me himself, and she told me to just let it go. I couldn't tell if it was puberty or if he truly hated me. Either way, it was exhausting. I just wanted to move out. I begged Mom to sit us down and help us sort things out, but she always refused, said it wasn't her place to get involved. When I asked her why he treated me like this, she'd just wave it off like it was nothing. Eventually, I left home for college. Got into my dream university on a full scholarship. I was top of my class. Dad was proud. He even threw a party. For once, even my mom looked proud of me. But David barely reacted. He barely looked at me, didn't say a word about my accomplishments. The day I left for university was a bittersweet mix of excitement and relief. I was thrilled to start a new chapter, but even more grateful to finally get away from that toxic household. The first few months at college were liberating. I made friends, loved my classes, and finally started building a life where I wasn't constantly bracing for David's next insult. For the first time, I could breathe. During my second year, I met Karen at a frat party through a mutual friend, and we instantly connected. She came from a religious background like mine, so having kids before marriage was a big deal. When she found out she was pregnant during our final year, we decided to get married right after graduation. Our wedding was small but full of joy. Our parents supported us, and for that moment, I believed I had it all. Karen felt like my soulmate. I never wanted anything else. I always believed in loyalty and never once cheated, even though other women tried. She was my home. But later, I discovered two separate affairs. One was an on-and-off thing with a married coworker that lasted for years. The other, a brief hookup with an ex while visiting her hometown. Looking back, yeah, maybe I was too forgiving. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home, and I honestly believed we could move past it. I tried to see the affair with her coworker as a mistake from when we were young and dumb. We were still figuring life out. And for a while, it seemed like things really had improved. But even though I chose to forgive her, the trust never fully came back. I did my best to set aside my doubts, knowing that forgiveness meant trying again without dragging the past into every argument. It's been 4 years since her second betrayal, and I had started to feel good about giving our marriage another shot. Karen seemed to have changed. We were happy again, even making plans for the future. Then, 3 months ago, everything fell apart. She sat me down and admitted she'd been in a long-term affair. And then she dropped the real bomb. She wasn't. Sure, if our son was mine. My entire world spun. I could barely breathe. I felt sick, betrayed, broken. When I finally managed to speak, I asked why. Why hide something this huge from me? Her response was cold, like she didn't even grasp the pain she was causing. Her answers were vague, like she was detached from reality. I kept asking questions, desperate for clarity. Eventually, she confessed that the other man was David. My head was spinning. I asked her what she meant, and she calmly told me it all started during a holiday visit. Back when I brought her home from college for Thanksgiving through New Year's, she got close to David. Oddly, he was actually nice to her, unlike how he treated me. I was happy about that at the time. I didn't want her feeling out of place. Karen wanted to be accepted, so she spent time with my mom and tried to get to know the family. She saw how tense things were between David and me and asked me about it. I told her the truth, that we had a long, broken history, and it probably wouldn't ever be fixed. Karen seemed to understand, but then started including David in more of our plans. Whenever we'd go out or watch a movie, she'd invite him. And I thought maybe that was good for us. David and I even exchanged a few words here and there, which was a big step compared to before. I remember them hanging out, playing video games, but it never crossed my mind that anything could happen. Karen told me later that David opened up to her about his recent breakup. He felt vulnerable, and their friendship deepened. She admitted he'd flirt when I wasn't around, and that one day things just escalated. I felt sick hearing it. The thought of my wife with my brother was unbearable. Karen said she felt guilty and cut it off, which lined up with her sudden decision to leave for home just before New Year's. I remember trying to convince her to stay, but she insisted. When we got back to school, she acted totally normal. Smiling, laughing like nothing happened. 2 weeks later, she found out she was pregnant. And now, she was telling me she had no clue whether the baby was mine or David's. She said she stayed with me because I was the dependable one. That's why she agreed to get married. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The child I loved might not even be mine. I asked if she and David had kept seeing each other. She hesitated, then nodded. She told me they'd always stayed in touch because their connection was undeniable. They'd sneak off to hotels and lie to me saying she had to work late. Half her business trips were really getaways with him. I asked why she married me if she really wanted David. She said she couldn't bring herself to call off the wedding. She saw me as a great dad, someone stable. She said she made a mistake but didn't know how to stop. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but I was done. I packed my things while she sobbed and begged me not to leave. Karen kept saying that if I really loved her, I'd fight for our marriage. That people mess up, that kids shouldn't grow up in a broken home. But I reminded her that the child might not even be mine. That shut her up. She cried harder and accused me of being heartless. Maybe she truly believed I'd never walk away. Maybe that was on me for tolerating too much in the past. I did love her, but maybe more because I thought we had a child together and because we'd been through everything since college. She said we could still fix things, but I didn't believe her anymore. Her words meant nothing. I could forgive. A lot, but not this. Not her choosing my brother over me. I left her there on the doorstep, sobbing, and got a hotel room. The next morning, I went straight to my parents and told them everything. The affair, the paternity doubt, years of betrayal. The look on their faces said it all. At first, my mom jumped to defend David, insisting her sweet boy could never do something that awful to his own brother. But I wasn't about to let him weasel his way out of this. I asked them to stay quiet while I called David. I needed him to think it was a private chat, to catch him off guard. When he picked up, I went straight in and confronted him about the affair. He denied everything, acting like I was insane. But once I told him Karen had confessed, his tone changed. He started trashing her, calling her names, saying it wasn't his fault. Women found him irresistible, claimed he was the better-looking brother. I told him I'd tell everyone. He laughed, smug, saying no one would believe me because he was the family favorite. That arrogance was all I needed. I thanked him for confirming everything, knowing my parents heard it all. There was silence on his end. Then panic. He tried to backpedal, make excuses. But it was too late. My mom, still reeling, demanded answers. David stumbled over his words, tossing blame onto Karen like it was her fault alone. But I could see it. Something in my mom broke. For the first time, she wasn't making excuses for him. She was hurt, disappointed. And then, for the first time in years, I felt like the truth had finally taken center stage. My dad, who rarely showed emotion, looked shattered. He asked me to hand him the phone. "David," he started, voice heavy with disappointment, "what you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother. You've disgraced this family. You slept with your brother's wife, and you didn't stop, even after they got married." He paused, letting it land. "You've destroyed the trust we had in you. I raised both of you to value loyalty, to respect family, to be decent men, and you've spit on all of it." He sighed, and then came the hammer. "Your mother and I, we failed you in some ways. We let you believe you'd never face consequences. But that ends now. You're cut off from the college fund. From now on, you figure it out on your own. Your tuition, your rent, your lifestyle, it's all on you. And if you think sleeping with someone's wife makes you a man, let's see how manly you feel without a dollar to your name." I stayed calm through it all. A part of me wanted to scream, but watching my dad finally see David for who he really was, that was enough. David's world was crumbling, and I didn't have to lift a finger. My mom still tried, briefly, to defend him. But my dad shut it down and ended the call. Afterward, my mom came over and hugged me. A real hug. Not out of pity, but understanding. It had been years since we shared anything like that. She whispered that she was sorry for not believing me sooner. My 14-year-old self could have never imagined that moment, being hugged by my mom after everything, after years of being treated like the outsider. Not long after that, my dad helped me find a lawyer to start the divorce process with Karen. She and her lawyer fought dirty, asking for alimony since I made more money. But her affair blew everything up. It worked in my favor. We also did a paternity test. And yeah, David was the father. That hit harder than anything else. Knowing the boy I'd loved, raised, and fought for wasn't even mine. I was heartbroken, furious, destroyed. Karen begged me to still be in his life, said he shouldn't suffer because of their mistakes. But every time I looked at him, I saw David, and I couldn't stomach it. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I moved into a small bachelor pad. For the first time in my adult life, I was living alone. I'd never had that experience since I got married so young, but I adjusted fast. I'd always been independent, and surprisingly, I loved it. 2 weeks ago, my dad called and told me he was rewriting his will, said David was getting nothing. Not a penny. I was shocked. But my dad meant it. He told me David had tried calling, even showed up at the house, crying and begging for forgiveness. But my dad didn't open the door. Even my mom, who'd always caved in the past, stood her ground. I could tell it wasn't easy for her, but she'd finally reached her limit. David never once texted me to say sorry. Not once. It wasn't about regret. It was about being cut off. He didn't care about the pain he caused, just about losing access to our parents and their money. My dad told me he planned to leave everything. To me, retirement funds, property, life insurance, close to $2 million. David would get $1, just enough so he couldn't contest the will. The only condition was that if my dad died before my mom, she'd stay in the house even though it would legally become mine. I had no problem with that. I wanted to care for her in her final years. Somehow, David found out about the will. And since he couldn't reach our parents, he called me yesterday. His voice was shaky, like he was desperate. He said Karen was demanding child support, and he was drowning in bills. He couldn't find work, said he was lost, and needed help, wanted to start fresh. I couldn't help but laugh. I told him I was done. I reminded him he made his choices. He slept with my wife, got her pregnant. Now he wants sympathy? No way. He tried to shift blame, said Karen was equally responsible. I agreed, but then I reminded him. I divorced her. She's his problem now. The kid, his. The bills, also his. I wasn't going to fix his mess. He started yelling, saying I was being unfair. I cut him off, told him, "You're not the golden boy anymore. You're just the guy who banged his own brother's wife." He got quiet. Then I heard him crying. He said everyone, our grandparents, cousins, even family friends, had turned their backs on him, which, honestly, was true. But I didn't care. Not my problem. I told him flat out, he wasn't my brother anymore, that he should never call me again. Ever. I've replayed that call a few times since then, and as much as I hate him for what he did, part of me still can't believe any of this even happened. I hadn't heard him cry like that since we were kids, and honestly, it messed with my head for a second. I won't lie, it did something to me, seeing him sound that broken. A part of me felt that old ache, like maybe I should have done something. But then I remembered everything he did. Every word, every choice, every betrayal. And all that pity turned into clarity. I didn't owe him a damn thing. Not anymore. Some people say I should talk to my parents, try to mediate. But I've done my part. I've carried more weight than I ever should have, and now I'm choosing peace. I don't feel guilty for walking away. Not this time. A lot of people couldn't understand why I stopped seeing Henry. Some even called me heartless. But here's the truth. I was lied to. I raised that kid like he was mine, poured everything into being his father, only to find out he wasn't. My son at all. He's David's. This isn't a step-parent situation. I was tricked, manipulated, and yeah, it broke me. I cried over it more than I care to admit. But the reason I had to cut ties wasn't just because of the DNA. It was Karen. I knew if I kept Henry in my life, she'd always find a way back in too. And I couldn't have that. I needed a clean break. I know that makes me sound cold. Maybe it is. But I needed to protect what little I had left of myself. And I just couldn't look at that boy anymore. Not without seeing my brother's face. Turns out it was my mom who told David about the will. That's why he suddenly showed up, begging for help. I called her out in front of my dad. She broke down, saying she just wanted to give David a second chance, that he'd suffered enough. But my dad didn't see it that way. He told her straight, if she thought what David did was forgivable, then maybe they couldn't stay married. He said he'd never accept that kind of betrayal, and if she ever reached out to him again behind our backs, she could pack her things and leave. My dad doesn't bluff, and that moment made it clear even to her. David's not welcome anymore. Not in our home, not in our lives. It's been a few months since then, and things have settled down. My dad and I actually have a decent relationship now. We go golfing on weekends. He jokes more. He opens up. And for the first time in years, I feel like I have a real parent. My mom hasn't contacted David since. She misses him, I can tell, but she's respecting the boundary. David, on the other hand, is struggling. He dropped out of college because he couldn't afford it. He's working part-time as a mechanic now, living with Karen, and raising Henry. From what I hear, they're barely getting by. He's called half the family asking for money, but no one wants to help him. Not anymore. I never bring him up with my parents, and they don't ask. It's like we all silently agreed. David's not a topic of conversation, and I'm fine with that. As for me, I'm doing okay. I got promoted at work, which has helped a lot financially. I haven't started dating again yet. I don't think I'm ready. There's still too much to sort through. Too much healing to do. I've started going to therapy. It's helping a little. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm getting there. Slowly. And for the first time in a long time, I'm proud of where I'm standing.